Hello there everyone, lovely to see you again. Normally, I'd fill this space with some witty monologue pertaining to the contents of the quest, and we'd all have a jolly good laugh at our own expenses for all the outlandish speculations we've wantonly thrown around over the past few years. But this time, I have for you 3 very simple words. Just three words. What the fuck? So, we learned a little bit more about the old long arm of the Orokin lore, Executor Ballas, this time around, and it actually filled in some gaps for once. I'd always imagined Ballas as this Machiavellian mastermind orchestrating all of the events we've seen up until now, but it turns out he's had a lot less of a creepy long hand in it than you might think. During the quest, you come across a device that stores information called a Vitruvian, on which Ballas has apparently stored records of communications he's had with dun dun dun! It's Hunhow. It turns out that Ballas has defected to the side of the sentients, which, I'll be honest, I did not see coming. In these messages, Ballas explains the nature of the Warframes as being humans converted into biodrones by using a controlled strain of the infestation. Nailed it! As it turns out, the method for instigating this metamorphosis was none other than our belligerent furniture friend, good old mysterious Helminth. Nice to finally get some clarification as to what the fuck he's doing in the ship. Then again, that does ask some rather uncomfortable questions about how we construct new frames, particularly as Ballas implies some of the Orokin outer colonies had a load of infested dumped on their lawn to help the garden grow. Did someone say open world areas? As most of the frames did not become as such voluntarily, they quite predictably rebelled against their creators and were, sent off to a lovely farm somewhere. Some of them survived and were captured and sent off to be confined on Lua. God knows how the Orokin built their glorious empire, because pretty much every technological advancement we've seen them make in the history of Warframe has blown up in their face. One such frame confined was Excalibur Umbra, who had, in his previous life, been a decorated Dax soldier who had caught wind of Ballas' treachery, and unfortunately had been caught with his hand in the golden cookie jar. Unsurprisingly, Ballas put this poor soul through unspeakable torments to break his mind for the metamorphosis. Oh my god, a board game, you fiend! He was twisted and warped into a Warframe, informed of all of his family's deaths before being forced to murder his own son, Isa. Well, it looks to me that this might all have been avoided if someone had just remembered to turn on incognito mode. Years later, when Lotus pulled Lua from the void, Umbra escaped his captivity and began running wild in the solar system. Through some mysterious whispers, Lotus shows the Tenno a vision of Umbra being destroyed by Ballas, and they head off to scoop up his remains and learn where Mums is trying to lead them. The Tenno finds Umbra's bits and bobs scattered about and proceeds to try and rebuild the frame, which once completed results in the stroppy little madam trying to beat the angsty teenage shit out of you. After a little chase and some rather invasive transference therapy, the Tenno managed to soothe Umbra and help him come to terms with the memory of what he did to his son. Interestingly, this raging beast of a Warframe puts me in mind of Rhino Prime's Codex entry in which the big lad himself goes absolutely bananas, potentially confirming that all frames, or at least the Umbras and the Primes, were made out of unsuspecting people. And I mean, it's not just Rhino either. We've got Mirage and Valkyr Prime's trailers to go on, and even your own frame's actions breaking war in the Second Dream. Maybe this is up for debate, but I feel like it'd cheapen such a huge revelation if only this new special frame had this tortured backstory. This also seems like the missing link in another certain someone's origin story. Maybe Umbra isn't the only Dax to have been changed. In any case, from seeing more of Umbra's memories, it becomes apparent that Ballas' reasoning for defecting is actually much more simple than some grand master plan. As it turns out, he simply couldn't live with himself after his faith in the Orokin lore forced him to be party to Margulis' death. Some people tried grief counselling before siding with the robot revolution, but to each their own. In true DE fashion, it's unclear exactly what his aims were in joining the Sentients, but I'd wager it has something to do with Lotus's resemblance to Margulis. Oh, Ballas, you romantic scallywag, you. Something I also found puzzling is that his defection supposedly takes place before the collapse, hence the presence of the Dax soldiers. But the information he gives Hunhow, being the location of the Tenno reservoir, seems to set up the events of the Second Dream. I think it's more likely that this nugget of intel is what sparked Hunhow into sending Natar to infiltrate the Orokin, but that creates a paradox assuming Ballas' reason for defection was Natargalis herself. Then again, we don't hear Hunhow's side of this dialogue, so maybe he made some sort of deal with Ballas which ultimately led to Lotus's resemblance to Marge, and would also explain how Natar so easily infiltrated the Orokin ranks. Moving on with the quest, after reconciling, everyone's favourite buddy cop duo Umbra and the Tenno return to Earth to confront Ballas, where he proceeds to chuck a bunch of sentients at you. After defeating them, Ballas confidently restrains Umbra, citing that the frame cannot defy its creator. This ultimately backfires because, like most parents, Space Dad didn't account for the unpredictable teenage mind, which earns him a stylish extra breathing hole in his abdomen. Rather disappointingly, Ballas keels over, and depending on which moral choice you make, he either reveals she foresaw this, or implies he is under her control. Whether or not this refers to Lotus or another female figure isn't clear, but more on that in a minute. Regardless, a beefed-up sentient drone descends from the sky, and it's revealed to be none other than Lotus herself. Wait, should we be calling her Natar now? Either way, she led us to Umbra through her vision, so I have to wonder if our Lotus isn't still in there somewhere trying to help us. Nutrient paste for thought. When asked what they did to her, Natar replies that this is what she is, nice callback, before attempting to fry her most attentive kiddywink with a fucking laser. Umbra steps in to save you before Natar scoops up Ballas, begins to channel energy and teleports away. Curiously though, before she goes, she mentions returning to her mother, drifting gaunt beyond the bleak star. Space Nana? In all seriousness, this sentient entity could be the one pulling Ballas' strings rather than Natar. Speaking of which, I doubt we've seen the last of Tall Grey and Handsome. An interesting side note is that after the quest is completed, the man in the wall pays you a visit for a chat. Your Tenno seems sure that they themselves killed Isa, implying that they're beginning to confuse Umbra's memories with their own. Wally seems pleased with this, which might be a breadcrumb as to what his motivations actually are. It's not enough to go on for now, but I feel like we might be returning to this moment in future. Now, earlier in the quest, the reason for the old war is unceremoniously revealed to be that the sentients, upon reaching the Tau system and finding a paradise, foresaw the Orokin bringing their new home to ruin, like they had Earth, and as a result, turned on their creators to prevent the great evils of littering and lower property values. In any case, whether or not this is true, or whether there's been some void influence going on here, it rather looks like we might finally be heading to the Tau system, and just in time for a TennoCon announcement. End of the trilogy, my arse. Hello again guys, welcome back. As usual, I hope you enjoyed this little retrospective. We got a lot to chew on while we wait for the next scrap of story D deigns to chuck into the alley for us entertainment-starved ghouls. So I hope you will comment down below if you've got some theories. I will do my best to read over them all and get back to you if I can. If you didn't entirely hate this video, you can stab the like button in the gut, and whilst it bleeds sweet YouTubey nectar into the carpet, you might consider whether you'd like to see more of my nonsense, and make it a double murder with the subscribe button. Got a little dark there, but hey, when in Rome. As ever guys, I've been Luke, this has been Loreframe, and you have been incredibly patient. Catch you later, you nerds.